Alright everyone, welcome back again to some more of Umineko. Let me tell you guys right now, I am fairly certain that the moment we start this game, we're gonna find out Hideyoshi and Eva have been killed. It's pretty obvious. I have a strong inkling that's exactly what's gonna happen, and it's gonna suck. But we're gonna continue on from there, guys. If anything else, hope you all continue to enjoy, and let's get right back onto it because I'm pretty excited to see what happens next. Alright everyone, welcome back again.
エヴァさんたちにもせめて食事くらい一緒にしないかとお声をかけなさい。どうせ断るでしょうが。
かしこまりました。
お父様の次はエヴァさんですか。つくづく後宮家の食卓には全員が揃いませんね。
Natsuhi felt her headache start throbbing again and lightly held her temples. The distance from the kitchen to the parlor wasn't that large, so Genji had gone there and back by himself, but the guest room was a little farther away. Natsuhi had warned him not to be alone without good reason. And just now, Nanjo had also admonished him, saying that it would be better if he held a little more concern for his safety. Genji took Kanon with him, and the two of them went to visit Eva and Hideyoshi in their guest room. Genji knocked on the door.
Eva-sama, Hideyoshi-sama, お夕食の準備が整いました。
He waited a short while for him to come out, but there was no response.
源氏様、これは。
Kanon pointed under the door. A Western-style envelope had been inserted under it. Normally, when something was inserted this way, it would be interpreted as a message from someone outside to someone in the room. So, since this might be a private note meant for Eva and Hideyoshi, it was not something that Kanon and Genji were supposed to take interest in. But this Western-style envelope was Kinzo's envelope, the same as the one Maria had taken out last night and surprised everyone with.
間違いない。親方様の封筒だ。
あるいは。
Although it had been Kinzo's envelope, the author of the letter Maria had read aloud last night had not been Kinzo. Genji continued knocking a little harder and called out in a loud voice.
エヴァ様、エヴァ様、源氏でございます。いらっしゃいますか。お返事をお願いいたします。エヴァ様。
But there was no response from inside. Sometimes when the servants went to call some guests for a meal... Hold on a second, guys. The guests would be sleeping so deeply that they wouldn't wake up. In times like that, the servants would stick a letter in the door to show that they had called by, and then leave the guest be. However, despite that, Genji beat even harder on the door and called out Eva's name. But there was no answer. Kanon stuck his ear up to the door and, holding his breath, listened for any sounds coming from inside.
テレビの音らしきものが。でも気配が感じられません。お部屋は空っぽかも。
Genji took out a handkerchief and, careful not to touch it with his bare hands, gently pulled out the envelope which had been stuck under the door. It had been sealed with deep red sealing wax. Without a doubt, the mark on that sealing wax had come from the Umieko family head's ring.
エヴァ様、エヴァ様、どうかお返事を。もうお部屋にはいらっしゃいませんか。
Even so, there was still no answer. There was a chance that the two were aimlessly walking around the mansion. This was the home Eva had grown up in. There was plenty of reason to think that she had gone out on a casual stroll. During the rain? Genji groped around his pocket and pulled out a bundle of keys, including the one that would open the guest room.
Genji-sama!
Kanon also understood what this meant. They would sometimes unlock a guest's door so they could go in and do things like make the beds, but only after they had made sure the guest was out. To unlock the door for a separate reason, and especially to do so when there was a chance the guests were still in there and without their permission, wasn't an action unbecoming of a servant. However, Genji had decided, if the only problem had been that his knock hadn't received a reply, he wouldn't have gone this far. But the envelope under the door was doubtlessly Kinzo's. Or rather, one of the Western-style envelopes of the Umieko family head. And after last night, the sender of this envelope could be someone other than Kinzo. This letter had been sent by someone other than Kinzo.
エヴァ様、申し訳ございません。お部屋を失礼させていただきます。
After giving that final notice, Genji stuck one of the keys from the bundle into the keyhole. There was the sound of the door unlocking, and then he slowly turned the knob and slowly started opening the door. Light seeped through the crack of the door. Were they in the room? Or had they forgotten to turn out the lights? It was the sound of the door chain being pulled tight. The chain had been secured. The chain couldn't be secured from the outside. That meant that they were in the room now. The sound of voices in the TV seeped out of the room. The lights, the chain, and the TV. All of these things made it clear that they were in the room. But there was no sign of them. Genji called to Eva once again through the crack of the door, but there was no answer.
Genji-sama, いかがしますか?
As part of their job, the servants were able to unlock almost any lock in the mansion, but they had no way to open a door with a chain. The only way to get by the chain was to cut it. That was certainly not permitted as part of a servant's usual work. A creepy chill was already rushing up their backs. Kanon held his breath again and tried to sense someone through the door, but even so, he had not been able to sense anyone.
私は奥様をお呼びしてくる。
What is that? Is that like a special ability of theirs they can sense?
カノンはチェーンの切断を。
Like, I know like a majority of them can sense the supernatural, but it's just funny to think that, you know, it's just a normal thing for them. Hey, let me just sense behind this door what's going on, you know?
Hi!
As Kanon rushed away hurriedly to get a cutting tool, he was called back by Genji.
待てカノン。厨房に戻り、熊沢と行動するように。断じて一人で行動してはならんぞ。
はい、かしこまりました。
It looked like Kanon was wondering why he had to do something so troublesome in the middle of this urgent situation. But Genji had said it out of wariness. He didn't care what happened to himself. But in the worst case scenario, he didn't want anything to happen to Kanon. In the kitchen was Kumasawa, who was piling food on the serving cart. Nanja, who seemed to have thought of a move that would turn the tables on Genji and had been awaiting his return and wanting to show him. But he immediately realized that something was wrong with Genji's demeanor.
おや、どうしましたか、源氏さん。
南條先生、申し訳ありませんが、この勝負は一度中断させてください。カノンはチェーンを頼む。熊沢、食事の配膳は一時中断し、カノンと同行するよう。私は奥様のところへ行く。南條先生もご一緒に。
何かあったんですかな。
Genji took Nanjo, who still didn't know what was going on, and quickly left the kitchen.
熊沢さん、申し訳ありませんが、僕と一緒に来てください。
何があったんですか、カノンさん。
Unable to take in the situation, Kumasawa said almost exactly the same thing as Nanjo and chased after Kanon, who had flown out into the hallway. Accompanied by Kumasawa, Kanon went to the storehouse. And from amongst the tools packed in toolboxes and hanging on the walls, he looked for a tool that could be used to cut the chain.
何を探してるんですか。私も手伝いますよ。
ドアチェーンを切断するんです。大きめの番線カッターはどこだっけ。
ドアチェーンをどうしてそんなことをするんですか。
エヴァ様たちのお部屋にチェーンが中にいらっしゃるはずなのに、お声をかけても返事がないんです。
It took Kumasawa some time to figure out how cutting the chain and Eva and Hideyoshi not answering were connected, but she did realize that this was an urgent situation.
これなら多分。
Kanon took down a very large bolt cutter that had been hanging on the wall. It was called a cutter, but maybe it would be easy to understand if described as having the shape of a large pair of pliers. He recalled being warned that it was a dangerous tool that could easily cut through one of your fingers. Kanon took that and rushed up the stairs. He knew it instinctively. He should fight for every minute, every second to open it quickly. Or maybe, already.
待ってください、カノンさん。
早く。
Kumasawa eventually caught up with him, gasping for breath with both hands on her knees. When Kanon changed his grip on the bolt cutter and looked up at the door, he let out an awestruck speechless. Ah, they're dead. I was right.
何ですか、これは。
Kumasawa screamed weakly, her face pallid. That was no surprise, because right there, on the door, just like the magic circle that had been drawn on the shutter of the Rose Garden storehouse, there was another eerie shape drawn with paint that looked like blood. However, it was dubious whether this one could be called a magic circle, because unlike what most people would think of as a magic circle, it wasn't a circle with shapes drawn inside it, but a slightly more geometrical shape. However, the strange non-alphabetical characters written in the gaps of the figure were without a doubt the same as the magic circle on the shutter. But the thing that had Kanon struck speechless was not how eerie the magic circle was. Only moments ago, this hadn't been here. He had returned to the kitchen for a short while. He had then gone to the storehouse to grab a tool and headed right back. Put those together and it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. My question is, wasn't Genji and Nanjo supposed to be there by now? Like, wasn't that the whole point? How could someone add something this creepy during that period of time? And as though it had just been drawn, almost like the door itself was bleeding, several unsettling vertical red lines slowly dripped down, getting longer and longer. Kumasawa's knees gave way and she sank down on the spot. If Kumasawa hadn't done this first, then Kanon surely would have wanted to.
Beatrice-sama. ベアトリーチェ様の仕業ですよ。恐ろしや恐ろしや。
Kanon gulped, then readied the bolt cutter and approached the door. He didn't want to get close to this disturbing magic circle, and he really didn't want to touch this steadily dripping substance that looked like blood. But if he didn't get close, he couldn't cut the chain. Finding this cold feeling, he gulped again, and after gathering his courage, went even closer, putting the bolt cutter up against the chain. He then pressed with all of his strength and cut through the chain far more easily than he had imagined. The cut chain fell into 2 separate parts, which continued to clang as they swayed back and forth.
Kanon-san, しかもこれは親方様のもの。
It looked like Kumasawa had also noticed the Western-style envelope at the bottom of the door, and that the sealing wax had been sealed with the head's ring. Kanon was lost for just a second over whether he should open the letter first or check inside the room, but he decided on prioritizing his original purpose. Kanon pulled a handkerchief out of his pocket. This was so he wouldn't leave fingerprints on the door. If his worst fears had been realized, the police would want to investigate this room too. He slowly pushed the door open. He was able to hear the sound of the television that had been seeping out slightly more clearly now.
Eva-sama.
Eva was face up on the bed with her shoes still on. Kumasawa, who had fearfully entered after Kanon and who was hiding behind his back, screamed a short "he" again when she saw Eva like that. Eva's shoes had been the first part of her that Kanon had seen, so the incongruity of wearing shoes in bed was the first thing that entered his mind. But after he shifted his line of sight towards Eva's head, Kanon couldn't help but let out a short scream like Kumasawa. Right in the middle of Eva's forehead, something was set there. Growing there. No. Right in the center of her forehead, an old-fashioned knife or some weapon like it was stuck right in. Ooh. So you're not gonna show us how it looks? From the base where it was stuck in, blood dripped down, staining the sheets on the other side bright red. Kumasawa's knees gave way once more and she sank down on the floor. Her mouth kept flapping open and closed, but she couldn't even scream. Eva, with some kind of weapon sticking out of her forehead, was dead. Both eyes were open wide, and the image of the person who killed her must have been buried into them. But the mouth which to speak that truth had already been eternally sealed. Even though that forehead was the last place they wanted to look, they couldn't tear their eyes from it. Right there, the weapon was stuck into Eva's forehead, standing almost perfectly upright. And on the handle was a design so complicated you could never expect to see it on an ordinary weapon. That thing could be summed up with the word cult. It was a vulgar object with a design that might have been of some demon.
Hideyoshi-sama wa... Hideyoshi-sama!
Eva was on top of her bed, but the other bed was empty. Where was Hideyoshi? After taking a backwards glance at Kumasawa, still on her knees and stupefied, he checked the bathroom just in case. At the moment he opened the door, he was greeted by steam and the sound of the shower. The bathroom was of the same familiar style as most hotel bathrooms, containing both a bath and a toilet. When taking a shower, a waterproof curtain was used to keep water from flying out. Oh, so they finally show it. The waterproof curtain was half open, and lying tumbled down in the bathtub was Hideyoshi, completely naked, both eyes still open. And those eyes were pointing right at Kanon. Just like Eva, a weapon with a demonic design was stuck into his forehead. Since his head had been under the hot water of the shower the whole time, his face wasn't half covered and filthy with blood like Eva's had been. But the sight of him dead while still taking a shower was tragic enough. Just then, Natsuhi's voice rang through the hall. She was probably coming with Genji. Oh, right.
またしてもこのような落書きが。
She went to warn Natsuhi first.
この手紙は中にはなんと。
いえ、まだ読んでおりません。
So, Natsuhi was the lucky one because of the, what do you call it, the charm that her daughter gave her. Everyone else that didn't have that charm and was in a room that had that sigil painted or crafted on the door got screwed over.
うかつに触らん方がいいですな。犯人の指紋が残っとるかもしれん。警察に渡した方がいい。
わざわざ手紙を残すくらいです。どうせ指紋など残っていません。
Stating this with finality, Natsuhi picked up the envelope. And before checking its contents, she entered the room herself, where she found Eva dead.
エヴァさん、奥様、こちらには秀吉様も。
これはむごいですな。
カノン、シャワーを止めてあげなさい。気の毒にも程があります。はい。
Kanon gripped his handkerchief and twisted the valve, turning off the shower. In the bathtub, a small bottle of body soap had fallen with its cap off. It really looked like he had been attacked right in the middle of taking a shower. The spray of blood still clung slightly to the white bathtub, and the combination of red and white made a horrible contrast.
南條先生。
わかっとる。死斑は出とらんな。死後硬直も始まっとらん。おそらく殺されてから1時間経ったかどうかというところだろう。しかしこのような柄の短い凶器で頭蓋骨を考えられん。
Nanja checked their pulse and their pupils, making certain of their deaths once more. As Kanon watched this business-like treatment, he thought, couldn't you tell at a glance that they're dead without doing all that? Exactly, they had a knife to the head. They're dead. End the story. Nanja thought about removing the weapon, but after deciding that where possible it would be better to hand the scene over to the police without disturbing it, he left it alone. However, a close examination of the base revealed that it had no blade. Or rather, it wasn't shaped like a flat blade, but was conical. He noticed that rather than a knife, it was more like a short-handled spear, something with a shape better suited for thrusting than slicing. Rather than a short spear, some people might call it a thick ice pick. At any rate, the original hideous purpose for which this weapon with its unsettling design was made, and exactly how that purpose was carried out, were both displayed here in such glaring fashion that there was absolutely no need to use further words to describe it. Natsuhi, hoping to escape the repulsive steam, filling the bathroom as soon as she could, covered her mouth with a handkerchief and dashed from the room. Just viewing their gruesome bodies for an instant had been enough to burn the image into her eyes. If she looked any longer, that image would surely remain in her vision for all eternity. The rising urge to vomit was exactly the same feeling she had that morning at the gardening storehouse. For a while, Natsuhi couldn't help but stand with her back facing the guest room, fighting that sickness in her stomach. Oh man, George lost not just his fiancé-to-be, but his parents too. This really sucks for him.
ジョージ君に見せるわけにはいきません。至急この部屋を閉じなさい。
見せられませんとも。両親のこんなむごい姿をとてもジョージさんには。
But the recklessly approaching footsteps were obviously George's, even before he came flying into the room. George and the other children had been waiting in the parlor, but when they had seen Genji call Natsuhi out and had noticed her turn pale and fly out the room, they had felt that he might have been the bearer of bad news. And When they saw a large group of people gathered around the guest room, they were sure of it.
父さん母さん
なんだよこれ。
エヴァおばさんたちは無事なんだよな。
No, they're not.
おいカノ君、これは何の騒ぎなんだ。
バトラ様。
Kanon didn't have to say anything. George just screamed after he ran into the room, told them everything they needed to know.
誰がこんなことを。殺してやる殺してやる。
ジョージ君。
Oh man, I keep thinking they're done talking, and Natsui touched George's shoulder with her hand, but he violently shook her off. George collapsed to the floor beside Ava and buried his face in the bed in front of his mother's face, wailing. Then he pounded on the bed with his fist over and over again.
ジョージ兄さん、しっかり。バトラ様。
Battler had his back against the wall of the hallway, and was without restraint covering his eyes with his right hand and weeping.
ひでえぜ。心に決めた女を婚約した次の日に失った。同じ日に親父とおふくろまで殺されるなんてよ。そんなのあんまりにも無謀じゃねえか。
Of course he felt sorry for everyone who had died, but Battler felt far more sorry for those who had been left alone by the deaths of others. Everyone here now had lost someone close to them. George wasn't the only one he felt sorry for. However, George's pain was far greater than everyone else's.
バトラ。
そりゃよ、人はいつか死ぬぜ。人間誰だっていつかは死別の悲しみと戦わなきゃならねえ日が来るだろうよ。でもよ、そいつは兄貴にとってはずっと未来の話で、しかもそいつは一つずつ順番に訪れるべきもんじゃねえかよ。無謀すぎるぜ。やろう少しは人の情けってもんがねえのかよ。
おう、バトラ、泣かない。
Maria tried to comfort Battler in a mechanical sounding voice. Battler violently wiped his tears.
ああ、くそ。もう流さねえぜ。悔し涙も悲しみの涙ももう二度と流さねえぜ。ああ、全然ダメだ。俺たちは魔女様に爪を食らってるわけだ。主勢一方ってわけだ。そりゃダメだぜ。全然ダメだ。チェス盤がひっくり返っちまうぜ。野郎は俺たち羊が明日まで逃げる手段もなく怯えてるだけだろうと思ってるだろうよ。だからひっくり返すぜ。明日までこの島から逃げられねえのは野郎も同じだ。しょんべんちびりそうになりながら逃げ隠れするのは俺たちじゃねえ。暴いてやるぜ。必ずな。明日までに。いや、明日なんか待たねえ。今夜だ。今夜中にその胸ぐらを掴み上げてやる。
That was some super serious stuff, man.
とにかくこの部屋は警察が来るまでこのままにして施錠します。いいですね。
Natsui proclaimed it as though she didn't care whether they agreed or not. If anyone had a right to object, it would have been George, but he looked as though he had shed enough tears. Still facing away from them, George nodded slightly and rose to his feet, and everyone else agreed in response. Natsuki still hadn't opened the head's Western-style envelope she had picked up. But since they would all be leaving the room now, she decided that she would unseal it in the parlor where everyone could watch. As soon as they walked out into the hallway to head back to the parlor, some of them immediately felt something out of place, or maybe sensed something strange.
答えよ。
マリアもわかるか。こりゃ何の匂いだよ。ひでえ匂いだぜ。
As they all sniffed the air, they did notice a horribly foul burnt smell, unlike anything any of them had ever smelled before, drifting through the hallway.
私、ちょっと厨房を見てきます。火はちゃんと消したはずなんですよ。
After noticing a burnt smell, it was natural that Kumasawa, who had just been cooking in the kitchen, suspected that her own clumsiness had caused it. Kumasawa hastily dashed away.
カノン、熊沢と行きなさい。一人にさせないように。
はい。
After nodding at Genji's order, Kanon went chasing after her. The others, although they did not run, also followed in order to search for the source of the smell.
臭い。
これは確かに鼻が曲がりそうな匂いですね。しかし換気のために窓を開けてもいいものか。
Natsuki was reluctant to open the windows in a situation where self-defense was so important.
換気扇を回させましょう。窓を開ける必要はないと思います。
ジョージの兄貴、話しかけても大丈夫かよ。
犯人を探す相談なら構わないよ。
It seemed that George had already climbed out of the abyss of his sorrow. All that filled his chest now was that quiet flame of hatred towards the killer who had stolen the lives of his beloved parents.
部屋にはチェーンがかかってた。さっき構造を見たが、とても外から細工できる代物じゃねえ。つまり、完璧な密室だったってことだ。
そうなるね。バラ庭園の倉庫の時は、シャッターの鍵を使用人室からこっそりと持ち出したのだろうとか、あるいは複製の鍵を持っていた可能性とか、いくつか方法が想像できた。でも、チェーンは違う。チェーンは一般に浸透した施錠方法の中で、最もシンプルに密室を構築できる。
チェーンだけは物理的に破壊しない限り、外からはどうにもならないぜ。じゃあ、つまり、犯人は扉からは出入りしなかったってことなのか。
こりゃ面白いや。つい数時間ほど前にも、扉以外でどうやって部屋から出入りしたのかって、みんなで騒いだ気がするぜ。
Back then, everyone had been making a fuss over how grandfather had disappeared from his room. Because of the receipt that Auntie Eva had stuck in the door on a whim, it was revealed that the door had remained sealed. And since Aunt Natsuki had been the only person to enter or exit during that time, she had come under suspicion. Auntie Eva had proposed a theory about how Aunt Natsuki might have thrown grandfather out the window, and left by the door herself. But this door is much simpler. It was sealed from the inside by the door chain. The window had also been closed from the inside and the bodies had been in the room. This time it really was, without exaggeration, a true locked room. That's right. If you include grandfather's disappearance, 3 incidents have occurred and all 3 times the door had been the point of interest. The first was the shutter. There was a key in the servant room, and if we assume someone knew about that, this can't really be called a locked room. The next was the door sealed by the receipt. However, Aunt Natsuki had entered the room. She could have let grandfather out through the window or thrown him out, and she would have been able to lock the window before leaving. Or, like my crazy theory, he could have hidden until the receipt was gone and left the room later. Basically, this door can be defeated with a handful of desperate tricks. In that sense, you really can't call this one a locked room either. And now we have the door sealed with a door chain. Finally, we have to give up. The window, the door, everything had been locked from the inside. It was a perfect locked room. The first hadn't been a locked room because everyone could be suspected. The second hadn't been a locked room because Aunt Natsuki could be suspected. But this time, no one can be suspected. Alright guys, I'm gonna have to end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. I called it. I saw it coming. It was foreshadowed. It was pretty obvious. Does it suck? Yes. Did it have to happen? Of course it did, apparently. And now we gotta feel bad for George. lost his fiance and his family. This is just a lot to take in. So we're gonna continue on with this story in the next one, guys. So thank you all for watching.